So you just recently played Final Fantasy Type-0.
Yeah.
Have you played this game before, this version or the original version for PSP?
So whenever I can, I try to download Japanese demos off PSN.
Get out of here.
Yeah, and so I did play years ago, 3 years ago, I played the Japanese PSP demo of Type-0. And there's so much to talk about today, Brandon, but Type-0 is coming out on PlayStation 4. That's what I played it on. And that game is really weird. It is a really weird Final Fantasy game.
Weird in a good way, or just weird? We're in both good. Do you agree with that statement, Kyle? That this is a weird Final Fantasy game?
Yes.
Okay.
In the opening,
I have Kyle here to corroborate.
It's intentionally weird.
I just don't want you
Yes.
spouting allegations and we have nothing to back it up.
It is meant to be a weird Final Fantasy.
yes, it is a more somber. I think that's the word I'm going to use. Yeah, it's a more somber Final Fantasy than other Final Fantasy games because it is they really focus on war and how that affects real people. So you have these cadets, they're these military students, and they're going and they're dying. In the very first cutscene, you see like this kid soldier get shot, and he's with this chocobo, and his chocobo's dying. And he's just talking to him, saying like, oh, hey, I wish I could see this person one more time. And then right before he dies, he realizes that he doesn't want to die. And so he starts freaking out, and you're like, whoa, this is traumatic. This is not, the grand adventure that you usually experience on Final Fantasy games.
And I think having a chocobo there is significant.
Yes, it is.
Because chocobos are in every Final Fantasy game.
But whenever you see a chocobo, it's usually like, oh, hey, there's the chocobo. This sure is a Final Fantasy game, and you can ride them. Maybe you can play this mini game or do this side quest. But this was like, no, this is this guy's companion. This is how they're using this cliche thing to attach to this character and make him more meanuful.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's like I remember Cyan or Cian or from Final Fantasy VI.
I say Cyan.
Like having Cyan like pulling the sprite of his wife out of the bed, and her like eyes being crossed and just like no, and like my soul's being ripped apart, and it's literally like there's no like that big.
Type-0 is a very difficult game. I didn't get to play that much of it, so maybe when the full game comes out, it won't be that bad. But when you get hit, you feel it. And like there were some attacks where I lost half my life bar, and I asked him about this, and his answer was that he wanted, he wanted war to feel meaningful. He says, when you're out there on the battlefield and you take damage, it's not like you just lose a little chunk of life or a number goes down. It's severe. And him tying gameplay into the story like that is just not an approach that you see in other Final Fantasy games, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, one thing he said to me once, it was at PAX, I talked to him at PAX, and I really liked a lot, this stuck with me, is he sees fire used in like RPGs in Final Fantasy, and just like, okay, you took off 5 HP. And he's like, I want fire to feel like fire.
Yep.
If you're shooting fire at someone, that is fire in this game, and I think that's the coolest idea. He's very self-aware, I think, of Final Fantasy and of his games.
The gameplay looked really fast to me, actually, in the last trailer that came out, and which I think is like a little risky because it doesn't look like a PSP game, but it looks like it was originally at one time because the environment's a little bit simplified. I think like the actual characters you're fighting received a lot more attention than some of the areas that I've seen combat take place in.
Definitely.
But I wonder if that speed kind of factors into what you're saying, that like we are giving you the speed to get out of the way. So like if you're right in the, if you're standing right there when something and you can't pick up on those tells or can't move fast enough or defend yourself.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to take everything we love. Like our RPGs are so abstract, and that's something we love about them. Is it's really just a game of numbers. He's trying to take that abstractness and make it feel more real. And one of the biggest ways he's doing that, and I think this is where the speed comes from, is when you're fighting enemies, you can just chip away at them. Or you can, during certain moments, like an icon will appear. If they have armor, it'll be a yellow icon. If they don't have armor, it'll be a red icon. And if you attack them when they have a red icon, it'll instantly kill them. And these icons only appear at like moments of opportunity. So a guy is reloading, and if you're able to predict like, okay, I've been watching his animation, I know when he's going to reload, and you attack him there, you'll instantly kill him. And that makes so much sense when you're thinking about it, right? Because usually in battle you try to take advantage of opportunities like that, and it's just a consideration that I've never had to make in an RPG before, and I think that's really cool.
Does it turn back on you? Are there any opportunities for an enemy to instant kill you?
No, there's not. But I think that's kind of balanced with, like I said, like even basic attacks against enemies, we're taking off huge chunks of health. And another thing is you can still pause the game and go over to your items and use a potion, but while you're paused, everything is still happening, like Dark Souls or like an MMO. So there was a moment where, my favorite moment in the entire demo, there was this guy, he was a super soldier, I don't remember what he was called, but the game didn't tell me that I couldn't beat him. I just wasn't doing very much damage, and he killed one of my party members instantly. And so the game wanted me to run through the chapter while battling other guys, also avoiding this super soldier with a giant sword. And he took away half my health with a spinning attack, and I tried to pause, and I tried to use a potion, and all of a sudden it says game over, and I'm like, wait, what? And I realized that the action was still going on while I was paused.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. And, there's a tutorial and everything, but in some ways I hate using this analogy, but it almost felt like Dark Souls, where there was so much about the game that I learned organically, and that just made it a lot more interesting to me.
Well, it's interesting. I think it's something that we're going to see come up more and more, and I'm sure like all of you guys really like it again. Like I cry and moan whenever I play games like Dark Souls because I think it's too difficult, but it really seems like it's having these ripple effects across the industry where we're seeing all sorts of franchises that are like, okay, I will, again, we're not going to like change the mainline things. This isn't like the new Final Fantasy, but like maybe the series can, is this something that was true on PSP? Like, was there anything they were like, force feeding you with when you went there to be like, we really want this to be a new game, and so we're focusing on this new stuff? Or do you think this game just holds up?
Well, that's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and it is kind of in a negative way. This is absolutely a PSP game that has been ported to PlayStation 4. There were moments where the main characters, your party, looks excellent, but there were cutscenes where like a person had a square face. There were some textures that looked really well done and up to par, and there were others that were just blurry and awful and ugly, and sometimes they'd be right next to each other. And the other thing...
There are guys with square faces in Assassin's Creed Unity, and I had a good time with that.
No, but it's like a really important story moment, and they're like, that doesn't look right. The other thing, and I think more troubling in a way, is, due to the nature of the limitations of the PSP, a lot of games are structured, like Peace Walker, for example. You had these big open areas that were essentially cut into squares, and so it was like you would have little challenge rooms where it's like, okay, these 2 or 3 guys are positioned here, get around them, move to the next square. And Type-0 is exactly like that. There are no like gigantic areas. Everything feels so sectioned off, because that was what they could accomplish at the PSP at the time. And it's frustrating because you'll just kind of like get into the flow of things. You're like, yeah, I killed this group, let's on to the next thing. And it's like, oh, no, I gotta go through this area and wait through a loading screen again and again and again. And so it just feels very sectioned off.
So do you think they should, like let people know, talk up the fact that like, oh yeah, we're porting this game? Or do you think the strategy for marketing it is to kind of be like, what if we just make people forget about the PSP game, show a lot of CG stuff, show like really quick cuts of the gameplay, so you don't really get a long time to like, I notice the camera's moving a lot, and they don't really get to like hold on these environments.
Emphasize the 15 demo.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. The marketing doesn't seem like the PSP Classic is back for the first time. You're right. It's kind of just...
But still cool. Still overall sounds like you're excited.
I think people have to go in with the right expectation.
Yeah.
I think Type-0 is a really cool, unique game, but will have some severe limitations because of the platform that it originated on. I'm somebody where, like, Dragon's Dogma is a game that has some severe technical problems. Like, the frame rate is really bad in that game, but the ideas are so cool that stuff doesn't really bother me. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I'm approaching Type-0. I don't want people to be like, new Final Fantasy game, awesome, PS4, and get the wrong idea. So.
But it'll still be interesting to see, now that this game will approach a wider audience, to see how people perceive it, how people think it relates to the rest of the Final Fantasy franchise.
Definitely.
That people are excited about. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem like the game that would get a direct sequel, but what this will mean for what else Square invests in the future.
Talking about the director, Tabata, really cool guy.
Yes.
He's just on top of his game. He likes to look at feedback.
Potentially going to have a very good year.
He's potentially going to have a great year. And
Some-
it's cool they're giving him that franchise.
Sometimes when I read Tetsuya Nomura interviews, he'll say something, and I'm like, you that doesn't make any sense. Like,
Yeah.
you're clearly in your own world where you think like it has its own form of logic. But Tabata seems so down to earth and grounded, and I can relate to him. You know,
Yeah.
he said that he went to New York, and so just as like a casual courtesy, I said, "How was New York, Tabata?" And his eyes lit up, and he said, "I really felt the pioneering spirit of America." And he just launched in this tirade about America's history and about how if he could be a pilgrim on the Mayflower, he totally would. And it was just this incredible moment. It was one of the coolest interviews I've ever done.
Well, I eagerly await what you think of this fine gentleman's game, and I'm looking forward to the final score. I'm assuming you're reviewing this game.
I hope so. We'll see.
Seems up your alley.
Yeah.
And we'll check it out then. Thank you, gents.
Yep.